Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Albandian. I am the coordinator for ISAR 2022. So ISAR puts on a conference every 4 years, and we haven't been able to have that conference since 2016. So we're having this conference August 25th through 29th. It will be held in Westminster, Colorado. That's right in between Boulder and Denver. And so we have we have exactly 100 speakers. You can go to isar2022.org to find all the information you will need to make your decision to join us at the conference. And hopefully you will make that decision. It's going to be very exciting. One of the speakers I have with me today, Gemini Brett, is a colleague of mine and a friend, and we are going to talk about what Gemini Brett is presenting at the conference. But a lot of you already know who he is, but I'm going to read his bio, do that thing. So those of you who don't know might learn a little bit more about him. He's a shamanic storyteller, an inspiring educator known for his devotion to reconnecting astrologers with the sacred astronomy of the living sky. His terrestrial translations of the celestial conversation expressed through the ancient arts activate seasoned sages as much as they initiate students new to the cosmic curriculum. That is a mouthful. Brett's passion, dedication, and innovation were rewarded recently with the Organization of Professional Astrologers, that's OPA, that's 2020 Orion Award for Outstanding Contributions in Astrology. Hi, how are you doing?
Hi, the early morning tongue twister trickster bio is probably not too kind. My apologies. I'm doing pretty well. I mean, the world's alive in interesting ways and trying to grow individually while also witnessing the whole as best as I can and confused about the whole thing and all that. So authentically, I don't know how I'm doing, but I'm excited to be here with you to spend a little time. And I'm really, really excited for ISAR and to spend some time with peers and colleagues in the same room for the first time. And
That's
so
what I
long.
wanted to
It'd be
kind of lean
wonderful.
into and to elaborate a little bit more how that feels to after several years now of only being truly able to engage or mostly engage with our fellow astrologers in our community through a virtual reality. And now we are coming back to in person, and ISAR is one of the two main conferences coming back in person for 2022. So what do you think? What are you feeling?
Well, anticipation, excitement, love. Um, Trying not to fall prey to expectation is always part of the game, right? I'll have been initiated by the OPA conference in April, the end of April. It's going to be a much smaller gathering, so it's kind of a nice little test case. Then I'll actually be coming from a small gathering in Sedona, and we'll drive through some of the sacred site lands on the way to Westminster for the ISAR conference. So I should probably be in a good centered, grounded space is my guess, although with Sedona, it could very clearly go the other way. But, I think as a empathic being, and I know this is part of your makeup too, and most of our community's makeup, it's going to be interesting to come together and feel that, but it's going to be a new teaching and consent, which is always an important thing at gatherings, right? Like it used to be, you just go in for the hug. And then we learned, oh, maybe you should ask first or get a little bit of a body signal, which was such an important teaching that I got initiated through in Seattle community actually in the last decade. And now, there's going to be just different levels of where people are with the whole thing. And, the fear body will likely be pretty high. So, I'm interested in finding how I will navigate that and bring light and all that, right? So I don't know. I'm. It's part of the global confusion that I'm feeling individually, and I'm really excited for it. I gotta say, I used to really like sports. I lived in Seattle for so long, and so I liked like the Seattle Mariners and whatnot. And then when I went through my awakening, or when that began, like it just got less interesting.
Yes.
But I would love going to the games and just seeing how there was this focus on this one thing. Right now, I mean, what if we could focus on world peace or something? That'd be nice. But it was really interesting to witness that and like all of the bodies. Do you know what I mean? And I think there's something in this time right now. There's just these acute sensitivities that are really coming up that ask us to have more open eyes, more understanding eyes, more compassionate eyes, and less judgment, which is, I think, always a really solid practice. So I want to learn that while I'm also teaching and learning from all the astrologers at the conference, which of course I'm so excited about.
So many good astrologers are going to be there, and such a wide array of lectures. And I'll remind everybody where you can find that. That's isar2022.org to find the schedule. There we have a very interesting platform for the schedule, and you can actually create a login to the schedule page, not the main page, but the schedule page, and actually create your own unique schedule, right? Choose lectures ahead of time, though it's not required that if you choose them, you go to them, but you can set sort of your agenda and print it. And there's ways to engage through the app where you can engage with people and post things. So it's actually very interesting. So let's actually talk about what you're going to be doing. And so you have a lecture and a workshop, which is very exciting. And so your lecture, when you presented it to me originally, you had something really exciting, taking an old technique and bringing in something new to it. So the title's called Directed Daily Perfections, a new synthesis of ancient timing techniques. So what is that really about?
It's hard to describe. And I have to say, I have, since I submitted that lecture title, discovered that it's not as new as I once believed. It's happened many times in astrology where I thought I invented a thing and I looked around and I asked a bunch. And, you know, I mean, I'm sure it's happened to you as well. But you have that idea for the book and then you go to the bookstore and you're like, oh, somebody already wrote that. And then you have these options of like, envy, why didn't I get there first? Or thank you, now I can do something else. Anyway, I have learned, and it's an old timing technique most astrologers are now familiar with, that's kind of been dusted off and come back from the ancient tradition called profections, which is one of the oldest timing techniques with which we are aware. Like directions, not the way that modern astrology is doing, like solar arc directions, but what we're called circumambulations or primary directions. Profections and transits were kind of the main ingredients of the predictive toolbox of ancient astrology. And they really carried all the way through the Renaissance before astrology disappeared and then came back with like a whole new shape. So I've been interested in this idea of profections, which because they come from the ancient Hellenistic times, so they were everywhere. Most of us are using whole sign houses when we deal with profections. And just the general idea is like, I'm Gemini rising, Mercury for life. But when I turned 1 and entered the second year of my life, we say the ascendant has profected to the second house. And in this interesting way, you're kind of moving through the chart. And so then Cancer, my second sign, would be my like ascendant for the year. And then the moon is said to be kind of the guide of that year. I prefer that term, right? And so what I asked, well, why would it just be Cancer for the whole year? What if I took that year and I slowly moved from 0 Cancer to 0 Leo as the next year began? And just moving that, just if you know Anne Orderly's pinball technique, it's a lot like that. And then in the tradition, it would be very similar, though timed differently, to what was called primary directions or circumambulations. And so I saw that as this combination of these things. I later learned from Martin Ganson's book first, and then saw on the AstroSeek website this option for what they call continuous profections, which basically does this. However, that was going down in medieval times when folks weren't using whole sign houses anymore. And so what ended up happening is I'm dealing with all of this data that this kind of hybrid system works. And so I'm just excited to present some of that data. It was a really interesting category that I was asked to present in, which it seemed like it could speak to traditional technique and also statistical analysis at the same time. So I'm trying to find a way to like teach actually at least just an overview of many simple ancient techniques. Oh, I don't know. They're as simple as a flower, and that's a complicated thing, to quote my friend David J. And then to kind of show how I've been testing them statistically. I was really excited to present this for a grant at the coming OPA iAstrologer retreat. And it was like, oh, wait a second, that's like not mine. But it's like this different take on it. I'm sure it was done. I knew that the whole time because it works and it's super cool and it's elegant and simple. And so that's that. I'm really stoked to show folks how to connect into it. I bet you many others have already found their way to it. And it's one thing that I've been using in client sessions and in my own analysis of like my year ahead or whatever, to kind of pinpoint highlight days of the year outside of kind of some of the obvious transit things that happen.
Cool. All right. So on Monday, you've been tasked with giving a workshop. Now, folks can add the workshop to their regular registration. Even if you register for a day, let's say you want to register, you just want to see Gemini Brett. You just want to see him. So you register for Sunday and then you register for Monday for his workshop. And so the workshop is Where in the World? Philosophy and Techniques of Relocation Astrology. So, you know, there's been a lot of work on that over the years, coming out of Jim Lewis and his work on Astro Cartography. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, and in some ways goes back to Ptolemy, but he had kind of a strange thing going down of assigning like different signs to different countries. And it in some ways seems willy-nilly. We know like in mundane astrology, folks usually work with an independence chart for a country or like a birth chart like that. And then there's this whole geodetic map thing that I know Jeffrey Wolf Green was playing with as well.
What?
And that in a sense is, I guess, a sister science to astrocartography, which was really brought in by Jim Lewis, which speaks to the power of angularity, right? So we have known for a long time as astrologers, and maybe this is one of the things we have the greatest statistical evidence for, the planets that are close to the angles are very powerful in a chart. And so we have these many timing techniques like profections. And a really wonderful thing is like my talk and my workshop of astrocartography, at least the astrocartography side of the workshop, they go together really well. Because as I was saying before, like I was born Gemini rising, but this year I'm actually in Aries year. And in Colorado, when I was born, Aries was rising. Right. So by location, that's a place I could go to maybe tap into that expression of the moment of my birth. In fact, in Colorado and Boulder, where I lived for many years and had a band, my Aries Jupiter was rising in the moment of my birth. And I hadn't considered until we were just coming on today, Laura, that by August, Jupiter will be in Aries. And so I'm kind of gearing up for a Jupiter return with in a place where Aries Jupiter was rising in my birth, right? It's like a cool thing. I see this all the time. I first learned astrolocality and astro maps by having that up on the screen while just having conversations with clients. And I knew like I didn't feel ready to go there yet, but people would talk about I lived here, or couples would say we've lived there. And these maps are like, whoa, like, you know, it's just amazing. The power of place, right? And the way that it seems that power places individually are often indicated by what I call planetary power paths on like the natal map, which is a chart. So astrocartography is one of these great ancient, well, not ancient, modern techniques that just shows us quickly on a map where planets were either in the moment of birth rising or reaching at the midheaven or resting at the descendant or rooting down below. And for me, they just say, hey, go look here and then cast a chart. It cast a relocated chart, which I'm sure, you know, that's been in the practice well before computers allowed the ease of Astro Cartography. And so I will certainly be looking into just relocated chart techniques. What happens when you move a stellium from the 6th to the 5th? And maybe that thing that used to be a lot of toil in your world has now become this creative realm, or you go and that's the place you have a child or something like this, right? And I'll also be teaching local space astrology, which I find to be a very powerful technique. I actually did a local space talk at NORWAC last year. And there's a few case examples that I like to start with because they're just mind blowing. It's like, okay, this thing's real. And then let's bring that into natal chart. So I'll be doing a bit of an overview. I love relocational astrology because, like profections, help me kind of turn the wheel. Like, you know, what would it have been if I was born with Pisces rising, which was happening in the West Coast when I was born on the East Coast in Boston? Or what is it every 12 years when the Pisces comes to my ascendant through these profections? It's a very similar thing in that regard. It's just one's moving through space and the other's moving through time. And I'm excited in the astrolocality to not dive so deep into every intricacy of the astronomy of the thing, which is something that very much attracts me to it. I'm such a sky guy and I like the astronomy workings of astrology. It's one of the things that first brought me to astrolocality because it's so astronomical and it's really opened up my eyes to contemplations of like, oh, well, what was the moon looking at when I was born? Or, you know, like how did Jupiter, if there was a big telescope on Jupiter pointed at Earth, what was Jupiter seeing? Like these kinds of things that I think are really fun. And I can teach for weeks and weeks and weeks, all those things, but I'm excited to just kind of give little overviews and then we'll use the workshop time to be kind of a deep dive of workshopping, right? And really having people dive into their own maps because I imagine we'll have an internet connection and it's amazing what we can do just on free softwares online. I use a few different ones for the astro locality. Astro.com is huge in this way and some other sites as well. So I'll be showing people not only like what these techniques are, but how to apply them real time. And then I look forward to like seeing results and, you know, having the class share what they find.
Excellent. So look, y'all, if you haven't been to one of Gemini Brett's lectures or his workshops, this man has a wealth of knowledge sitting inside of him. He absorbs so much. I've recognized that in you as I've watched you evolve your astrology through the years. And so very exciting. And y'all should give this serious consideration to check out and seriously add the pre and post conference workshops to your agenda for the conference. Remember, you can go to ISAR 2022.org to find all the information. The conference is happening August 25th through the 29th. It's happening at the Westin Westminster, which is right in between Denver and Boulder. And so we're excited. It's going to be August. It's going to be beautiful weather. And it's going to be great to be outside in the sun. So we can't wait to see you all. Thank you, Gemini Brett.
And I'll just say also under the stars, like Westminster's a little bit further away from the bright city lights. It's new moon time. The stars should be shining in August. And so one thing that's not on the schedule, which you can pencil in if you'd like, is night times where I'll be pointing out stars and helping people find the midheaven in the sky and those kinds of things. It's one thing that I've always done at NORWAC. When this cloud is gone and August in Colorado, we have an even greater chance of seeing some stars. So I hope you'll come for the whole thing. And I'm really, really excited to connect in with community again. I'm so I'm grateful for and thankful for folks like yourself, Laura, who've kind of kept the community gathered through the advent of modern technology during these strange times. But of course, there's nothing like being heart to heart in the same room. And I think there'll be a new level of gratitude for the opportunity for us to come together with our peers. And that gratitude carries a medium for the exchange of ideas. And so I think it's going to be a revolutionary time.
And for ISAR, the theme of the conference is in fact joining hearts and minds. So we're very excited to do that. So thank you very much for taking the time today out of what I know is, I'm sure, a very busy schedule. And